As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. Today we have a very special returning guest, Bill Murphy, co-founder of GATA.org, the Gold Antitrust Action Committee, and a widely known speaker and expert on gold and silver price suppression, is back here with us again on Reluctant Preppers. Thanks for joining us, Bill.
Great to be here, Dunnigan. Thank you.
Bill, something that's on everybody's mind these days is, are gold and silver really breaking out at last? They've been in a 5-year-long depression or suppression, and the first quarter of this year, according to David Morgan and some others, was one of the strongest quarters we've seen for gold in a long time. However, David Morgan is warning us that he was still cautious because he was watching for a follow-through confirmation signal from silver, which at the time that we last spoke with him about 2 months ago had not yet occurred. Have we seen that confirmation response from the silver market as well now that indicates a full turnaround and a bottoming in precious metals in your view?
Well, it's a good question, Dunnigan. I mean, until 2 days ago, silver was acting differently the past 3 weeks than it has for 5 years. I mean, everything you can think of. I mean, the way it was trading and so many things that it could get into. And, then it started the Challenge 18. Everything changed, at least for the last 2 days, in the sense that, gold is just breaking out of it after going sideways for 2 months. And, today it's both silver challenged 18 at key resistance and gold at 13, and silver acted crummy on Friday, which was back the way it used to act relative to gold. And then today, with gold up on the day and the dollar getting killed, silver got buried for 30 cents. And it's really an extraordinary time because the silver open interest is near an all-time high, and gold open interest went as bonkers as I've ever seen it ever. Of 48,000 contracts in the last 2 days, as the gold cartel, as we call it, is doing everything they can to prevent gold from going up. So we're at a very key crossroads in the sense that they're attacking silver the way they used to, although silver's just been spectacular the last few weeks. I mean, it's really been a spike, sort of a move. Gold just broke out of a big base. It had every reason to explode today. The open interest is way up there in both. Everyone is expecting this gold cartel to attack again, but it's all up to the physical markets. If they're strong, eventually, this gold cartel, the bullion banks, U.S. government, and so on is going to get taken out. The only way gold and silver can ever go up again in price from these levels is if this gold cartel gets beat, and we have what's called a commercial signal failure, in which all this massive selling is overrun by the real markets, the physical markets, and the speculators.
And on that point, we've been told, as you're saying, to watch for the beginnings of a separation of the physical market and physical demand from the paper price. Do we see any signs of that physical demand outstripping supply on the gold or silver markets?
Well, it's a great question. It's so difficult because you never know what's going on behind the scenes. I mean, look at all the demand that came out of China last year. It didn't mean it didn't mean a thing, nothing. It was as if it wasn't there. However, it's my opinion that the gold cartel is reaching a tipping point in both gold and silver. It's a gradual one in which they're running out of physical supply to feed the market, to keep the prices artificially suppressed. We saw it in silver until the last, 2 days where it's run up from 14 to 18. Gold is basing, as I mentioned, is breaking out, and we think that they're having trouble there. We don't know what the new Shanghai Gold Exchange is, how it might be affecting the market. We know that silver just happened to really get a boost once the Sprott Group bought 86 million ounces of silver. And I think whether it's right now or very close by, that we will reach that tipping point in which this gold cartel is going to be forced to retreat.
And in that regards, are there cracks in the wall? Are you seeing specific signs? You watch very closely, and you're very expert at seeing the particular patterns and the particular styles of attacks that have been used, are you seeing any specific examples where the manipulation is already starting to fail, and how can you tell?
Well, we were seeing a bit of that in the way silver traded, as I mentioned, the past few weeks, and the way it just took off, and no matter what J.P. Morgan and the rest of the gold cartel did, it went right in their face, and people were talking about the open interest in silver and going up and up and up, but they've been saying this for months now, and it's still, the price still goes up. And now we've had it in gold, in which, it's gone to multi-year highs, the open interest, and gold is still going up. Even today, they tried to whack it, it didn't work. The real crack now, it's very clear, I mean, at least I think it is $1,300 gold, a decent close over that level, and silver to blow through 18. If silver can get through 1850, the price is liable to go bonkers because of various technical reasons, and that would be exactly what you're talking about, the signal to many of us that have followed this for years, in which J.P. Morgan and the rest of the bums are getting beat.
That 1850 level for silver is the same number that David Morgan mentioned when we talked with him. And you mentioned just a few minutes ago some deep pockets starting to buy major amounts of silver. So here's the next question from a reluctant prepper standpoint is for individuals, for people who have been waiting. They've been sitting on the sidelines or sitting on cash or savings or sitting on IRAs or 401ks. If they've been sitting and waiting for the time reluctant to jump in to owning precious metals, is there any reason that you can see for them to continue their holding pattern, or are we seeing what might be the last fueling stop before liftoff here? And if people are really serious, if they've really reflected on this, they've talked about it, they've thought about it, they really know that they want to be in precious metals, is there a better time than now, based on the market action you're seeing for them, to make that move?
Well, we just had some pretty good runs in gold and silver. I mentioned this silver move in gold in a week went from 1220 to 1300. So it's not unreasonable to expect some correction. What was galling today and what made it outrageous was the dollar got killed. There was every reason for gold and silver to explode today. The bad guys showed up again like they've done so often. But if you go to a risk-reward ratio, especially in silver, it's off the charts. So what's your risk? $1, $2, $3 on the downside, and the upside is 100, 150, let's say. So to let an opportunity like that get away, what's the point? We're getting close to this thing ending. Don't know if it's going to take another go as we just had the past period of time. Hard to say, but anytime you can buy gold and silver on dips from here, it's going to pay off. The last 5 years have been a horror show, in fact, what they've inflicted on the market. But what's important for your listeners to heed, I think, at least it's just my opinion, is that gold and silver, the prices have been artificially suppressed as a result of what they've done. And so when they lose control of this thing, when it finally goes, and we could be here, we might be a little ways off, you never know, it's going to be violent on the upside. It won't be just a gradual move this time. And then it'll be very hard to get on board. So again, the risk-reward ratio is very favorable at the moment, even though we've had this run-up in prices.
And it's kind of a contrarian way of thinking to the mainstream. A lot of people look for other signals for what they consider health in the economy, or where they get their confidence in the economy. But for reluctant preppers, they have had some grave concerns about the fundamental health of the economy and of not just our national economy, local and regional, but also global economies. And what's pessimistic for an unprepared person who is subject to the whims of the mass movement, the mass of people out there, is maybe optimistic or can be profitable for those who have taken the right positions ahead of time. So if you could go out on a limb and just give us your personal, not going to hold you to it, but what you think is the most realistic outlook for 2016 for gold and silver, and maybe for 2017 as well. We know you don't have a crystal ball, but you're very close to the actual forces that are moving and preventing the movement of these precious metals. And if you could just give us your personal opinion of what you think the most realistic outlook is.
Well, I think the first thing, the most important thing to understand is that, especially gold, but gold and silver have moved up this year. With right now, the Dow and the NASDAQ aren't that far from all-time highs. And initially this year, when the stock market was under such pressure, there was a lot of safe haven bids in our markets. And that's disappeared of late. And still gold and silver are near their highs for the year, even though the stock markets have come way back. And people have gotten very sanguine about that everything's okay. And of course, a lot of people in our camp think that the underlying fundamentals are very treacherous, and that the economies in the world, the United States, aren't that good, and they've been held up for various reasons, quantitative easing and other things, and that that could fall apart at any time also. So when it comes to silver, for example, I think we don't know how they've kept the price down. I mean, I've asked David Morgan; he doesn't know. It means where they've got the silver from. We know how they kept the price down. Where do they get the supply from? So when silver starts to go, my guess it'll be violent. It'll go straight for 50, take it out. In my opinion, you'll have a very big correction then. Everyone will be expecting it to collapse again, and then it'll shoot for 100. That should be over this year and next year. When it comes to gold, look for it to take out its all-time highs of around 1923 and keep on going. If gold had kept pace with inflation, it would be $2,600, $2,700 right now. So, the exact numbers get very difficult, but people that own it are going to be very comfortable when everything else is falling apart, and they'll have their protection. And, it's a long subject, and there's so many aspects of it, but now's the time to make sure that, you've got something to allay any concerns that are likely developed as this year goes on.
We were having a conversation with some family members over the past weekend, and they are at retirement age, and one has been retired for some time. Two of them just retired, and they were looking at all of the difficulty that they're having trying to find ways to draw income from fixed income, contracts for certificates of deposits or other savings accounts or that sort of thing, and wondering what is out there that is both a safe place to not lose all your capital, but also have a realistic expectation that you're going to come out ahead over the next, decade or two. And we were talking with them about precious metals, and it was almost like speaking a foreign language. I mean, these are people who are seriously looking into options, trying to educate themselves, and having the real need to make decisions, but they just turned and said, where in the world would you buy gold and silver, and how would you know that you can trust people? Because they've certainly seen some glitzy ads on television over the past couple of years, and it's some of those can sound like pretty sharp salesmen or whatever over the news or on the television, but we started describing some places that we were familiar with where you could obtain gold and silver, and talked with them about forms of gold or silver that were most widely recognized, that sort of thing. And it was like nobody had ever talked to them about this stuff before. So, Mike Maloney of goldsilver.com talks about how the average Joe is just completely unaware of this. There's nothing in our public education, nothing in college education, nothing in our popular media, that people just don't find out about. Where in the world do you get a hold of a reliable source of high integrity? You're sure it is what you paid for, gold and silver. I know, again, you're not a seller of precious metals, and you don't represent those who do, but just what words of wisdom when you meet people, and you must as you go through your day, who aren't familiar with this, when they say, what do you do for a living? You try to explain to them. If they show interest in obtaining gold or silver, what do you tell them? Where do you tell them that they should consider?
Well, I'm a little prejudiced because my brother is in the business, but I mean, basically it's the best thing to do is, because there's different forms and ways you can buy it, is just to go out and get 3 or 4 different people from or sources from people like yourself, and then checks the bid, the offers of where it is to buy. I mean, they have to make a little money too, because that's how they stay in business. So there's a premium to the spot price, but these people can check the spot price. Nowadays, of course, with the internet, I mean, you can do all kinds of searches and checking on the reputations of people. And there's a lot of really fine people out there that are selling gold and silver, and the best just to get a balanced quotes and then to get on board.
Thinking about when you were describing the number of contracts of gold that have been transacted in the last today, you just wrote an article today talking about 47,000 or so contracts worth of cabal bonkers in 2 days as gold advances. Can you help our people understand how much gold is covered by a contract, and is this people who are trying to sell that much, people who are trying to buy that much? What exactly is the activity that you're describing there?
That's a good point. Well, basically, on the COMEX is what they call an open interest, which is number of contracts on an exchange that people are long and short. They're equal. And it goes up and down based on how many people want to play at a given time. And, recently, the gold open interest was going near multi-year highs. But in the last 2 days, as gold surged, that doesn't even include today, the open interest of buyers and sellers went up almost 50,000 contracts. And in the traders report, called the Commitment of Traders Report, it reports on who's doing what. And they're so-called commercials, which is mostly the gold cartel, the same group I've been talking about, is going bonkers to sell contracts to keep the price from exploding. And I don't think I've ever seen it go up 50,000 contracts in 2 days, which, I mean, the recent all-time high was, 500 and, right over 500,000. Now it's way, way above that. And it means this is how desperate they are to prevent the price from exploding. And what we're hoping to have happen, whether it's this trip or the next one, you'll have what's called a commercial signal failure, in which the gold guys suppressing the price all this time and trying to keep it down will all of a sudden get overwhelmed, as I mentioned earlier, by the spec longs and the physical market, where people want the physical suppliers. You're talking about some of your listeners to get involved in. And then what they've done and got away with for the last 4 to 5 years, it fails, and many of the weaker hands in there will be forced to cover at higher prices and get out because they have such a losing hand. We haven't seen that, but it's coming, and I'm just hoping it's this particular period of time.
For people who want to find out more and follow your awareness and your insight into the action of price suppression and the defeating of it by the physical market, where can they follow your work, Bill?
Well, I write something called the MetropolCafe.com. Long story how I picked that name many years ago, but I write a daily commentary and get involved in gold and silver and the financial markets, and people can sign up for a 2-week free trial, see if it's of value. And then my colleague Chris Powell does a great job at Ghana.org, in which he puts out stuff about the gold price suppression scheme and some other market events and so on. That's free, so people can try that. And together, we're still fighting a good fight after 17 years, and we're going to keep on going till we win.
That's what I wanted to ask you last is, what does it look like for you? Have you thought that through and talked that through with your colleagues? Is after the physical market overwhelms the paper suppression that's been going on by the cabal and the prices do resume their march to their, inflation-adjusted historical highs, will you see a role for you to continue to be vigilant as time moves forward, or will that be basically the end of the dark ages here and on to a fair market for precious metals?
Well, eventually we all fade into oblivion at some point. And I'm not the youngest guy in the block. It seems like I was when I started, but time has gone by, and we're gonna carry on until this thing gets exposed. And I think it'll be one of the biggest financial scandals in American history. Not so much for gold and silver; people don't care, but because of what it has masked and what's going to happen, and people are going to want answers, and there's going to be all sorts of commotion and defaults, and because of where the prices have gone and why, and it'll all become uncovered. Just recently, as you may know, the banks in London, Deutsche Bank admitted rigging the price. I mean, along with other
That's right. I was going to ask you about that. I mean, Deutsche Bank has had some very concerning news recently in a couple different fronts, but that's a very big name, one of the biggest names in global banking, and yet that's right. If you could tell us a little bit more about that, because people sometimes say, "Oh, this is all just conspiracy theories," or "All this is suspicion," or "All this is just hype and trying to pump up." And try to get people excited for no reason. But if you could tell us the facts that are coming out about what was actually settled, what the claim was that they actually settled about.
Well, basically, Deutsche Bank got caught rigging the gold fix in London along with other brilliant banks, and they turned on the other banks. In other words, to get a lesser sentence, they turned on the other guys rigging the gold price in London. And what that means is for 17 years, what God has been saying is now fact. It's not just our, conspiracy theory stuff. It's conspiracy fact. Of course, the big story is what they're doing in the United States, which is a whole other thing, which we don't need to get into. When that blows up, that's when all of God's work will pay off. And getting back to the end of your last question, that's what we hope will occur before, we sail off into the sunset. We're hoping that we've had 4 international conferences, and we hope to have our last one will be a celebration one in which we, go over the whole thing and have some fun and just get together and share some laughs and go over some of the great stories over the years and so on. It's coming, and it's going to be spectacular, and I thank you for getting a hold of me, and it's something that your listeners should at least pay attention to and be aware of.
Now, do you anticipate after the physical price overwhelms the manipulation and gold and silver re-attain their highs, that people who have been prepared by accumulating physical gold and silver prior to that will have the option of deciding what other assets, whether it be real estate or other commodities or whatever that they want to transfer some of their wealth into from gold and silver? I mean, what is a realistic outlook for someone who has accumulated precious metals when those prices reach highs? Then do you anticipate, for example, that the pendulum will overswing in that direction because after they've attained a fair price, which they haven't been able to enjoy because of the suppression, that the pendulum will overshoot because there'll be this stampede of people who are afraid of being left out of, being stuck with debt-based currency, that sort of thing? Yeah,
that's the way markets generally go. This one, to me, is like Newton's law. For every action, there'll be an equal and opposite reaction, and the opposite reaction will be gold and silver will go absolutely bonkers to the upside. And at some point, it's be like anything else. It'll be time to at least unload a good portion of it and get involved in other investments, which are going to go on. They're not going to disappear, whether it's interest rates or real estates or, various stocks and so on. It's just that right now, this opportunity is just at the top of the charts, and that's something we'll have. That's one of the things hopefully we'll be able to discuss at our final conference. Okay, now what do we do? Where do you put some of this money? And that'll be a pleasure to do.
Well, we'll continue to follow this, and we'd like to continue to have you back, Bill, because we really appreciate your expertise and your depth of years of looking at these things to help us understand what we are absolutely not going to find out on the evening news or in the daily paper or anywhere else, and just appreciate you being on our side and being here on Reluctant Preppers.
Well, thank you, Don, again. I hope the next time we get together to chat, it's because things have really started to pop, and what we're talking about today is unfolding.
Let's hope so, and we'll circle back with you in a few months and see what we can learn. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. Bye-bye.